really appreciate it on your last day in town.
Yeah, gotta meet my bro, Steven Yuan.
This is, man, so first time we met online, was it 8 months ago?
Yeah, it was end of April. I was onboarding.
End of April?
I was onboarding at the new job, and you were the freelancer, and I was like, that dude looks cool.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
We had a great talk. I remember that. And like once I started this podcast, I knew one of the first people I wanted to have on was you. Obviously, you were in Beijing, so we couldn't do that. Yeah. But better late than never. So you onboarded at our last. We used to work together at ByteDance. Wish you're still there. Congratulations.
Yeah. Parent company of TikTok and Douyin and a bunch of other
and
products.
The best app ever.
Yeah.
Dude, I still use Lark. Like I forced my team to use Lark.
Yeah?
Yeah, you know that. Like I forced them to use Lark. I think it's a great app. What made you... So let's just take one step back because I know you a little bit. Before this, you ran your own company for a couple of years, I believe.
Yeah.
How many
From
years?
2016 to 2020, early 2020.
Okay.
So like right before COVID.
Right.
Basically.
Smart. Yeah. I think this is like, I think the transition you went through is something that a lot of people think about. Robin, come on. She like fucking destroys walls when we record now. This is fucking terrible. I think a lot of people who hit their late 20s and early 30s who've kind of done their own thing get to a point where they go, should I jump into a corporate role? Right, because there's that comfort, there's that assurance and safety net. Yeah. So what was that for you?
Exactly, and it was the same. I was turning 29.
Yeah. Good age.
And I had kind of like a quarter life crisis, I guess.
Are we the same age? 1990?
87. Older than you.
Ah, shit. Yeah. Okay.
So I was working at a startup as a product manager. And the work was fun, but it was really, really challenging. Was getting burned out. And I think late 2015, something happened where one of my good friends got into an accident in London and he almost died.
Damn. What kind of an accident?
He was riding a bike and he didn't have a helmet. And this dude in a stolen car like crashed into him and his head landed on the pavement.
So he was
like,
blindsided
and like they had to take parts of his skull out because his brain was swelling up. Anyway, long story short, his girlfriend calls me and she's like, hey, Jay, like Bart's not going to make it. My friend, just wanted to let you know.
Wow.
And he ultimately ended up making it and he's doing much better now.
Thank God.
But like that shit kind of fucked me up a little bit.
I'm sure, especially if you're close with them.
Yeah. And I'm like, I ride bikes all the time in Beijing,
right?
Without a helmet.
Yeah,
that could have been me.
Yeah.
And if that is me,
right,
would I be doing what I'm doing right now? And the answer was no.
Right.
So 2016, I kind of took a gap year, went to Europe, traveled, I visited Bart in London actually, but really thought about what I wanted to do with my life. And the last few years before then, I'd been doing improv. It was something that I was really passionate about, right? Unscripted theater. We get up on stage, have no idea what we're doing, get some suggestions from the audience and just perform.
Right.
And at first it was like, oh, this is a great outlet for me. I get to like vent and like play characters and just do silly shit, right?
For sure.
But in 2016, I was like, hold up a minute, like Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours, right?
Sure.
It's the one thing that I had been doing consistently for the last 4 years.
Improv.
4 or 5 years. Yeah, improv. And I was like, I'm like okay at it. I'm pretty good at this. What avenues can I explore to turn this into a business? So I looked at schools that I've been to in New York, UCB, people that I've talked to in Shanghai and Singapore, and kind of a model came about like for corporate training. So using improv as a way to develop soft skills for companies.
How does that work? How do you develop soft skills with important and corporate? Because I love comedy. I've done a bit of comedy. We've had a couple comedians on this podcast now, but improv is like a different beast.
Right, and that's a great question.
Yeah,
because people at first it's hard to see the connection, right? Like you're on stage, you're performing, you're acting. Not everyone can do that, right? And I usually tell people, hey, like, when we do the trainings, it's not about making you an actor. It's not about making funny, right? What we are, we're a group that, has to perform under pressure and innovate together. And come up with new ideas together.
Right.
And so are there things that we can apply to the corporate setting?
Right.
Yes. Right. Yeah. Communication, collaboration, creativity. All these things are elements that we can distill from improv and apply to any team. It doesn't have to be in the corporate setting, right? Nonprofits can use it. Even freelancers, right? They have to work with other people, right? Anyone has to communicate and work with other people can really use, the foundations of improv, what we call yes and.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought it up. I've heard about this concept in improv, the yes and concept, where it's basically no matter what the other person does, your job is to go yes and, right? Like you're building on top of that. It's not just acknowledging it or whatever else. You gotta take it to the next level. Exactly. Yeah.
And that's what we're doing right now, right? Whatever you said, I'm building on your ideas.
Yeah, but this podcast is a little bit different. I'm just fucking talking on this one.
Right.
I find that really interesting because it is, in many ways, I can see how that would build a cohesive team because it trains you to be empathetic. It trains you to kind of see it from the other person's point of view, right? It trains you to kind of see where the other person was going to go with acting or where they were going to go with the scene and how to build on that.
And it builds an amazing team dynamic.
Oh, I'm sure.
Where you're not worried that everyone's going to like shoot down your ideas, right? You're like, okay, people are supporting me.
That's interesting,
right?
Which is important.
It's just positive team culture,
right?
That's what it is. And the more we see that, the more it reinforces that, hey, like I can put my ideas out there.
Yeah.
And that's like a virtuous cycle.
Yeah. No, I'm sure that's a virtuous cycle. But let me just play devil's advocate for 1 minute here.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure there are also times when the other person's idea is fucking terrible. Right? Both in corporate and in improv.
Of course. And the idea of yes and is not saying like every idea is gold. Right. It's saying let's embrace ideas and make people feel heard. At the end of the day, we don't have to act on all of them. Yes. We don't have to say that they're all brilliant. Right. What we're doing is saying, hey, we heard your idea.
Yeah. Yeah. And hearing their idea, I guess you also learn to kind of divert it in a productive way, maybe, right? Where it's like you hear them, you acknowledge them.
Yeah. But then sometimes bad ideas, when you repackage them, they become
great ideas. Yeah.
Yeah. Better ideas or even great ideas.
Yeah. For sure.
And some of the best products that we have, started off as like really shitty ideas,
This is
and they get iterated, right?
Yeah.
They get improved.
Right.
And so I think it teaches us to not judge at face value sometimes.
Right? That's a very important thing that I think most people do not learn. Like, to be honest with you, I don't think I've learned that at this point. Like at 30 years old and like recently,
you're just 30,
bro.
So
man,
young.
Listen. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I understand. A lot of people tell me I'm still very young, and I'm very fortunate for that. But I feel like a lot of times we don't actually realize what we need to learn. What you just described is something I've never thought about. Like actually having to learn to take things at face value or not at face value, right? Or even how to discriminate against that.
Yeah.
Like one of the things I'm trying to learn more recently is just, this is gonna sound fucking terrible. How to be nice.
Wow. Okay.
Dude, this is something that came across my my life maybe 2 years ago, where like just the concept of learning to be nice and like just because when you grow up, people just be nice, right? Like if you meet somebody, just be nice to them. But nobody actually teaches you how to be nice. Like what does that actually
You grew
entail?
up in Canada though. Like
I know, but
that's like
a little different.
I feel like that's the default mode for Canadians. You guys apologize for everything.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. But yeah. Like,
so what sparked this change? Like when did you realize like, hey, I need to be nice? Like,
well, I think you get to a point. I'm very similar to you. I had a quarter life, midlife crisis at 29 as well. It's what, it was last year when we first met.
right.
In many ways. But you get to a point where you realize that, or at least I did, that I can be a better person, and being a better person leads to things that would make me happier. And that the things that make me happy are these relationships that matter to me, both personally and professionally.
So what does being nice mean in action?
So for me now, maybe like a year in, and I'm still learning. I would not say I'm a nice person, to be honest with you. I think I'm learning to listen and to actually hear you.
Okay.
I think this goes back to what you said with improv. It's a yes and thing, right? Like I think especially as men, maybe it's just me, but I think a lot of guys, they just, when they hear about a problem, we just want to solve it.
Right. We're solutions oriented.
Right. You know, and it's just, that's really not the point sometimes. Yeah.
And sometimes people just want to feel heard.
Exactly.
They just want to talk things through.
Exactly. You know, both professionally and personally.
And listening. Hey, listening is like the foundation for this, right? If you don't listen, you can't say yes and. Right. There's nothing to build on.
Right.
If you don't listen.
Bro, this is one of the things that I really liked about you when we first met. Because we had so you and I haven't met until today. And, you know, despite that, I feel like, you know, seeing you today, and like, it's not like we talk a ton either, right? Like we talk here and there and it's a nice conversation, but seeing you today, it's kind of made me feel like I saw somebody, like an old friend I haven't seen in a while.
Yeah. No, it definitely feels like that.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that says a lot about you, much more about you than about me, because I'm the asshole in this equation, right? Like you're the nice
I wouldn't
guy.
say you're the asshole.
Yeah,
you're the tattooed,
asshole.
know,
Yeah. It's okay.
tough guy, you know, like
Nah, that's all for show. That's not who I am at all. Going back to the improv thing, I think one of the things that I found really interesting is we had a guest on maybe 10 episodes ago, my friend Lynette, who works as a corporate designer at IBM. She does like UI UX for IBM.
Okay.
And, you know, she came on this podcast and I thought that we were going to talk about that. And then she was like, no, I would love to do improv. I was like, what?
Really?
Yeah. I think more.
So she's an improviser?
No, she hasn't done it yet. She hasn't made the leap. I should introduce you guys.
Yeah. Let me connect with her.
But she's here. Do you know the improv people here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Pretty much everyone.
Right.
In
It's
Shanghai.
a small circle in China, probably. Right?
I just met a few of them yesterday, and then on Tuesday I was at a workshop.
So, what is the big difference for you between improv and stand-up? Because I only see it from the stand-up
It's
side.
such a big difference.
Right.
I'll use sports as an analogy.
Okay.
I would say stand-up is more like golf, right? You can practice by yourself. You can work on your swing. It's a very solitary sport.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and it's very prepared, right? Stand-up comedians prepare their stuff. They work it with friends, with people that give them feedback, right? And it's very much scripted. Improv, on the other hand, I compare it to basketball, right? It's very spontaneous. It's very in the moment. You're a team, and everything's fluid, right? It relies on impeccable teamwork. Like the best teams in improv are the ones that really get you out of your seat.
So when you do a show with improv and there's a live audience there, right?
Yeah.
Like how is that defined? You just go for a duration of length, or how?
Yeah, so improv, there's two main divisions within improv.
Okay.
There's something called short form, which if you've ever watched Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Yeah, dude, one of my favorite shows when I was young.
Right, me too.
For
Yeah.
sure. When I was like
And-
12,
and I
13.
loved it.
Yeah.
And short form improv is where you define the rules of the game, you tell it to the audience, and we're going to play this game for like 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And
It's a lot of like one-liners and stuff
it's
like
very
that.
high energy. It's very funny. And then there's something called long form improv, which is a little bit more like theater. The rules aren't so clearly defined.
Okay.
You're just kind of getting a suggestion, maybe off the top of the set, and you're just creating characters, and you're building relationships, and you're creating this whole world. And it really relies on the sense of like trust, right? We're on the same team. Like, let's not fuck this up.
Sure.
Yeah. Let's just keep yes-anding each other and until we find something, and then let's just like build it, And it's really powerful, and it's this amazing feeling of building a world from scratch. Like
Right.
it is really uplifting.
Is that what you do mostly, long form improv, or?
So in Beijing, we do a mix.
Okay.
So first half, we go for like an hour and a half. First half short form, second half long form.
You go for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Bro, that's long.
That's like a movie, right? 90 minutes.
Yeah.
And we want to entertain our audience.
Absolutely. Sorry, I didn't mean it that way. I just meant like that's fucking impressive that you can do it for an hour and a half. Is what I meant,
and
right?
we could do it longer.
Because comedy is the opposite. Like comedy, you have to build sets, right? Like you talk to a comedian who's been a pro comedian for like 4 years, and he'll tell you he has a hard time squeezing out like a good 20.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very different.
It's very calibrated. It's calculated.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of respect for stand-up comedians. They're masters of their craft. The good ones.
Yeah.
Not the ones at your regular open mic.
I've seen those. Yeah. I've been one of those.
Yeah, and it's just a very different game.
Right.
And both are great forms if done well, and if done poorly, They can both be awkward and painful to watch.
I am sure. But I guess in your situation, the show goes on probably, right? Because you're trying to tell a story, if I understand.
Yeah. And what I love about improv is like, you have a scene that doesn't land.
Right.
Boom. You wash your hands.
You just move on.
You just move on. And that's what's awesome about it.
Do you guys take prompts from the audience and stuff?
Yeah. So we take suggestions.
Right.
So I'll be like, hey, what's our relationship? Oh, father and son. Okay. Hey, dad.
Oh.
Have you seen mom? Like,
wow.
And this is the moment where you're like, well, son, I need to talk to you.
Okay.
But if you're like, who the hell are you? Right. You've just said no.
Yeah.
You've just said no to me. And then we can't really continue. Right. So that's why yes and is so important. I just baked in some improv.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What is like the average, how do I say this? When a person first wants to do improv versus until they can go on stage with you, what is that like? Like, is there some sort of training? Because in comedy, it's like you do open mics, you fucking bomb, and then you just do that over and over again.
Yeah, steep learning curve.
Yeah, right. But like, at least there's a threshold, right?
But it really depends on the person too. Okay. Some people, it takes years. Right.
Really?
To develop this like comfort on stage, right? It's about stage presence. It's about, just really being willing to put your ideas out there and embracing like the unknown, right? Because improv, you step out on stage, you have no idea what the fuck you're going to say. What are you going to do?
It's fucking terrifying.
It's very terrifying for a lot of people. It was terrifying for me when I first started.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
I remember having to down 2 beers before every show. I was like, I'm going to get a little wasted before getting up on that stage.
I would get blackout wasted if it was really. Dude,
but some people, especially if they have a theater background,
right?
Or they're just very confident and they're great at public speaking, it takes a little bit less because at the end of the day, you have to overcome that fear of like being in front of a room full of people, right? And not knowing what you're going to do next, right? For a lot of people, that's paralyzing. So if you can get over that hump, you're well on your way.
But then you got to be funny on top of that, right? Because
I think it took me like 2 to 3 years before I felt like I was actually any good. I think the first year to 2, I was like, every time I finished a set, I was like, oh, I don't know about that. And I had moments like I was pretty inconsistent, I would say. Right. Like I had moments where I was like, oh, I was okay.
Yeah.
But I had moments where I was like, oh, I was fucking dog shit.
That's how I feel about this podcast, man. Like honestly, we have episodes now where I'm just like, wow, that didn't, I wish that could have gone better.
I think with a podcast, it's almost like the same thing, right? It really relies on the chemistry between the people, between the two people, right? And if you don't have any chemistry, it's gonna not be very good.
It is absolutely true. And like I said, you are about episode maybe like 35, somewhere around there. So I've done it's about 30. Yeah, I'm not sure it's gotten any better, to be honest with you.
Very prolific.
Dude, this has been a fucking grind, man. But I mean, you did it as a grind as well. I think one of the things I wanted to ask when you were telling me about that is when your first 2 years, I guess how this works is probably similar, right? Because you have moments of highs. Like when you do a good show and you're like, wow, that went really great. I'm sure that's an amazing feeling.
It's pretty close to sex, I would say.
It's
like 1A and 1B. Like,
it's probably cheaper than sex. And then the other part of that question was just when you have the lows. Yeah. Because I'm sure those come as well. I'm sure those come one after the other, sometimes consecutively.
Right.
What is it about something like improv where you probably embarrass or humiliate yourself on stage, right? And you just gotta roll with it, and you gotta show up the next day or the next week and just do it again.
And it's like improv has taught me so much, and this is an area where I feel like I've really grown tremendously. Is every time like I'm putting myself really outside of my comfort zone. When I first started, I'm an introvert.
Yes.
Like,
really?
I don't like.
Bro, I would not have guessed that.
Yeah, and a lot of that is due to this kind of training, right?
Wow. Okay.
And just putting myself out there every time and developing thick skin. And I think that's the bottom line, right? The more you do it, the more you're like, okay, that's it. What's the worst that could happen? Nobody laughs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You feel like
it's
shit
awkward
and you move on.
All right.
Yeah.
I've experienced it. like I've been there. I've performed for 2 people.
Yeah.
Steven. I've been there. So, and now, I get out there. I'm usually pretty confident. I usually feel like I can probably kick ass,
That's awesome. Why has so like I said once again, I don't know a ton about improv, right? Like all I know is there's that Chicago place that's like Second City or something
Second
like,
City.
Yeah, that's like very well known,
really
right?
well known. Yeah.
And a lot of them go to SNL and stuff like that. I guess that's the peak. Like what
That's
is
the traditional path to success.
Yes.
A more overlooked path is actually going into comedy writing in Hollywood. So actually a lot of the top comedy writers, directors came through comedy, and like people like Steve Carell, also came through improv.
Okay, I didn't know that.
So there's a big funnel, both for sketch comedy and also for comedy writing in general.
Right. That makes sense, I guess. Is that something that you would consider pursuing, or are you?
That's a great question.
Yeah,
that's a great question.
Because like I sit here, across from you, and this is part of the reason why I love doing this podcast and love opening this way, is because when you open in a topic where the guest is passionate about, you can kind of see that passion, right? Because I'm sure if we open up with your work, you would not have been this passionate, maybe, right? But like
how would you have guessed?
Yeah, I mean maybe your new role, but like you obviously are very passionate about this, and it seems like the worst is behind you. Right, so like, is this not something?
I think you pay your dues.
Yeah, it sounds like you've done some of that.
Right. And at the same time, I'm still cognizant of the fact that I'm an Asian American man. And if I'm trying to make it into the industry like Hollywood, I think there's still certain barriers. And
you don't think that's changing?
Definitely is. It's much better than when I was, in my 20s, looking at Hollywood. And, you probably look around and there's a lot more diversity and a lot of forced diversity too, right?
And to be fair, a lot of bad diversity. Yeah, like I just watched this fucking Netflix trailer today for this Asian reality show in LA. It's like the Kardashians but Asian,
right? And
I'm just like, this is not what we should be putting out right now, man. Like we don't have good content. We should not be putting out this shit.
Right.
HBO has one. It's called House of Hoes. Like this is like Texas, dude. It looks fucking terrible, man. Like, it's these like super, super beyond rich, completely plastic surgeryed out type of people, family. Like it's literally like Kardashians, but Asian.
Right. Asian Kardashians. Wow.
It's not good, man. Yeah.
So like Crazy Rich Asians, but like the reality series,
and shittier, and like just. But I guess that sells. I don't know. I don't know what Asian Hollywood is these days, to be honest with you.
And that's the thing. Like I feel kind of disconnected. I've been in Beijing for 10 years now.
It's a long time.
I don't feel like I have my finger on the pulse anymore when it comes to creating content that people want to watch. I want to get into it, and I would love to start creating something.
So I think this brings us to like another kind of crossroad that probably you and I are in the same boat as, where it's just as a male, because we can only speak for men, right? In our 30s, you also get that other side of the pressure. There's like, where's your career going? This is when your career should really take that hockey stick curve. Right, like roughly where you and I are at.
Get that bag.
Yeah,
get that bag, Steven.
And we're just like, and we're having a conversation about whether or not we want to do improv in Hollywood. Do you feel that side of the pressure kind of affecting your pursuit to do this, or
not really?
Okay, so fucking do it then.
I think this side of my 30s, I've learned to just give way less fucks.
Awesome.
Yeah. I think my 20s was filled with like giving way too many fucks about things that didn't matter.
Free fucks for everything. Yeah.
And now it's just like, okay, what am I actually interested in?
Right.
And what can people pay me to do?
Right.
Because I think you still need to have that intersection between, like sustaining your passion. Like I'm not gonna just like go out there and do shit because I want to do it. And find out that nobody actually needs what I'm selling or what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So there definitely has to, I'm inspired by this Japanese concept called ikigai, right? And it's 4 intersecting circles, right? What are you passionate about, what you're good at, what the market can pay you for, and then what makes an impact. Okay,
so let's walk through this. You are passionate about some sort of improvisation or making people laugh. You're good at it.
Yeah.
The market can pay you for
it.
And,
it does make a positive impact.
Yes. I think
in my 4 years of doing this
sure.
in China, I really felt that.
Absolutely.
And I think COVID kind of slowed that down. It really messed up my plans.
Yeah. I completely understand what you mean, because like when I first came here, so I came here in 2013, so I came here right when comedy started in Shanghai. So I did about a year or two of comedy when I first came. Like, to be honest with you, it's still one of my favorite things to do. It's just...
Were you performing like KFK?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, like I knew all the original people there, Barney, Andy, all of them, and then when they split and everything, you know, at my peak, I could maybe do like a good 10. You know, but then again, like I was 24, like I didn't have enough life experience to actually be, you know, a comedian, right? Like very few people are good at 24, and the ones who are have put in years of work.
Yeah.
Comedy is really one of those things where you cannot fuck around. Like, it looks easy. It's just some dude going on stage fucking telling you about his life. It is not like that, man. Like, it is. Yeah. It is hard. It is. So, you know, what
it's you were... It's a cutthroat business, too.
Yeah, bro. What you were telling, you know, performing in front of 2 people in like a 15 square meter bar on like a Thursday night after having to take a 1 hour bus to get there. Yeah, I know what you mean, man.
Yeah.
I get that vibe.
The sacrifices we make for our craft.
Yeah, man, for sure. But like being able to see kind of what KFK has done here and also the comedy scene, like we had on a Hong Kong comedian last week. His name is 69 Ranch. We're going to publish the episode probably next week.
Nice.
I think he's really funny.
Yeah.
You know, and he's in Hong Kong and we were talking about it, and the scene in Hong Kong really hasn't grown much.
Right.
Which I find insane because like this is an English first city.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas Shanghai is not an English first city, but like this comedy scene here has really grown. Like you have like 3 or 4 clubs that do comedy now.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to trash Hong Kong. I lived there for a year.
I'll trash it. I'll trash it with you. Yeah. Hong Kong's terrible.
I just don't think Hong Kongers really appreciate like culture as much.
No, they don't. You know, they appreciate money.
Right.
Yeah.
And most people would rather get trashed in Lang Kwai Fong than like, you know, go see some live comedy or...
I don't like Hong Kong. Like
Me neither. I'm not a big fan.
Yeah, I like the city has its charms. I think what I like about the most about Hong Kong is how close it is to nature.
Yeah.
Right? Because you can get out on a Saturday. Like,
I mean, 70% of Hong Kong is forested.
Exactly.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Like you can be in Central and within an hour be like in the mountains.
Yeah. There's probably a lot of Hong Kongers listening to this.
Shit on them.
I'm just... I like the idea of Hong Kong. I didn't like living there. And
okay.
To be fair, I was a broke college student.
Sure.
Living in fucking the New Territories.
Yeah, that's not a good place to be.
In Dai Wai.
Yeah.
Not even in Shating, in fucking Dai Wai on the KCR.
Yeah. I've never even lived there. Like I've been to Hong Kong a lot, right? But like I've never, like the longest I've been is maybe a week.
Yeah.
What I really didn't like about Hong Kong is just how on top of each other it felt.
Yeah.
Like, especially on the island side. Excuse me. Like now when I go, I usually just stay in Kowloon because Kowloon's at least a little more spread out, I feel.
Right.
But like you go to Central, like it is literally like everything is on top of each other. And
I have some friends who actually live out in Sai Kung. And that's a really cool area. I love like this little fishing village.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of Hong Kong that I really appreciate. You know, the outlying islands, Sai Kung, like stuff that is like not densely populated.
Yeah.
And you feel like, okay, this is a throwback to what maybe China used to look like.
Sure, yeah.
Right. Because they've preserved a lot of the traditions. That's what I really appreciate about Hong Kong.
Yeah,
and Taiwan as well.
Yeah. And also the food and the culture and everything. And, you know, like, once again, you and I are probably not the most valid opinions of this, right? Because you lived there only for a bit, and I've never even lived there at all.
Yeah.
But going back to the comedy thing, you know, we were just 69 Ranch and I were talking about it in Hong Kong, and we're just like, it's not blowing up there. I'm like, man, just come up here. Like, it's much better here, I think. How's it like in Beijing?
The comedy scene took a hit the last few years. I think it's coming back bit by bit.
It's hard to grow though.
Yeah, and for a scene that's based on expats, you know, with the English scene, it's very transient, right? People come and go. You know, you have really good performers, and then next year they're gone.
Yeah,
especially after COVID.
Right.
But what I really appreciate about Beijing is like the local Chinese scene is actually quite strong.
Yeah, it's growing here a little bit too, like Chinese stand up.
Yeah, and that's where it needs to go. You know, that's the potential, right?
Yeah. Do you guys do improv in Chinese?
I used to do bilingual. I used to do Chinese and English, but it was too much of a mindfuck. So I keep it to English, but I've done plenty in Chinese as well.
Are there Chinese shows still?
I think